Hello guys, I hope you are doing good. In this video, we'll solve a JavaScript problem where we are asked to create a request and response interceptor for the fetch method. Interceptors works as a wall between the client and the server. So in the request interceptor, whenever a request is sent from client to the server, the request will be intercepted. Then we can do different types of processing. We want to change anything, we want to update the headers, so we can do all those things in the interceptor, and after that when we pass that, the interceptor will carry forward the request to the server. Similarly, in the response interceptor, once we get the response from the server, we can process it, we can check if the server is giving right response, what's the status code, if the user is authorized or not, and then we can do different types of action as per our requirement in the interceptor, and then return back that response to the client. So here we have to create the interceptor for the fetch method, because fetch is the native method available in the JavaScript on the browser. So we'll be overriding that only. So let's start coding. To override the fetch method, what we have to do is we'll be overriding the original fetch. We'll be storing the original fetch in a variable and create a custom fetch method. In that, we will have the request and response interceptor attached. So let's start creating that. So first store the original fetch method. As you may be aware, the fetch method is available globally through the window object. So it's part of the window object in the window, and in the Node.js it's part of the global object. So we can fetch, or we can get the original fetch from the window and store it in a variable. After that, we'll override the original fetch. We'll create a custom function which will receive all the arguments. The first thing we have to do over here is the argument has to be passed to the request. So before sending the request to the server, we have to process it in the request interceptor. So let's say we create a request interceptor, and then we pass the arguments to the request interceptor. Now this request interceptor will return the updated request. So let's get that and store it in a variable. After that, we'll pass this updated request to the fetch method. So here I'm using the async await, but you can pass it directly because the fetch method returns a promise. So I'm using async await over here. So let's pass the updated request to the original fetch. Now this original fetch method will return us a response. Now that we have received a response from the server, we'll have to pass it to the response interceptor for further processing. So let's create another method, response interceptor, and then pass the response to it. Now this will intercept the response, and then it will do certain processing on that as per the requirement, and then it will return an updated response to us. So let's say updated response, and then we can return the updated response from this overridden fetch method. So here, as you see, in this new fetch method, we have used request and response interceptor. Now these methods are not available to us. We will have to create this, and because the fetch method works globally, so it's best to add this on the window object, so that this request and response methods also are available globally and can be used anywhere within the application. So let's create that. Let's add it, window dot request interceptor, and this will accept the argument, and after that it will do certain processing and return that argument. So here I'm not performing any sort of action. We'll just console log to check, just to make sure that the request is being intercepted through this method. I mean request interceptor. Similarly, we'll create another method for response interceptor, and in these two we'll log, but what we'll also do is, so as you are aware, response, the fetch method returns the response, and after that we'll have to convert that to the JSON format for the getting the data in the JSON, in a JSON format. So as you can see, the fetch method returns a response, and after that we convert that response to the JSON format, and then we can print it in the then we can print the JSON data. So what we'll do is, we won't perform this action after getting the data. We'll do this in the response interceptor only. So here we will convert it into the JSON format and then pass it forward to the client. So client don't have to do this every time. So our request and response interceptors are ready. Now let's try this. So I'm just using a dummy API which is available through the JSON placeholder, and then we can add it over here. We can remove this line. We don't want to convert it to the JSON format. The response we get, we want to print it as it is. So let's just print the response, and it should be available in the JSON format to us. So if you can see in the log, the request, so let me clear this and let me run this once. So if you see this, the request first goes to the request interceptor. After that, we get the response. The response goes through the response interceptor. It is processed, converted to the JSON data, and then we get the JSON. And finally, the JSON is printed here after the fetch request. So this is how you can create an interceptor for the fetch method. Right now, this is not the best practice because we are overriding the original methods. So what you can do is, you can create an instance of your own fetch, and on that instance you can add the interceptors. So this way we won't be touching the original or the native codes, and we'll be creating a custom use case for us, and then we can use it further, just like how Axios does. I hope you have learned something new today. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.